Hey everybody, today it is time for something completely different. Don't go away. Hey gang, it's Paul from Fat Guy Productions coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. And today it is indeed time for something different. Today we're going to do a model build start to finish. It's one of my favorite things to do and I'm going to take you with as I do it. Alright, let's get right to it. So today we're going to be building the Horizon Models Mercury Redstone. This is a model of the ship that took man into space. Should be a lot of fun. I think photo etch is every model builder's yin and yang. We love it and we hate it. It makes the kits look great, but can be really difficult to work with. It's always nice to have it included in the kit though. The decals look amazing. Talk about perfect registration. These things are printed really, really well. Before any build, I always review the instructions very, very carefully, especially if the kit is from a manufacturer I've never built before, such as Horizon's. Alright, so let's get building. I begin by removing the parts from the sprues using a pair of sharp side cutters. I love these ones from Tamiya. They feel substantial in your hand and not like they're going to break. They don't feel flimsy at all. They're super sharp and have a great flat side. I'm very careful not to use them for anything except cutting plastic. Every part gets a once-over to ensure there's nothing left of the sprue and to look for flash. I'll use my X-Acto knife with a sharp new blade to trim away anything that shouldn't be there. Prior to glue, everything gets a test fit. I want to make sure that I fully understand how everything is going to go, and I also want to make sure that everything is fitting right and there's no last minute adjustments I need to make. My primary adhesive is Tamiya Extra Thin Cement. Sometimes I'll use Tamiya Extra Thin Fast Setting Cement. I have a lot of different adhesives in my arsenal, and if I ever use any of those, I'll be sure to let you know what I'm using and why. With the Tamiya cement, a little dab will do ya. Just take the wet brush and touch it to the seam, and capillary action will pull the cement through the seam, and the two parts will weld themselves together. Always be sure that the alignment of the part is right while you're doing this. Oftentimes you can just hold the parts together, but sometimes there's no substitute for small clamps tape, or rubber bands. This thin cement can run like water and can get places you don't think it's going to be. So always be sure to know where your fingers are at. You don't want to put a gluey fingerprint into your model. On this kit, after working on the body and some of the fins, I'll start working on the launch platform. I thought Horizon Models did a great job including the platform. It's not a big deal, but it sure is nice to have it. And that finishes up the platform with the exception of some photo etch. I'll put all of that on later. Now I'm going to move on to the escape tower. I had no idea what was in store for me. This isn't a big rocket by any means at 1/72nd scale. It's pretty small, and the escape tower is very, very small and delicate. When you have big ham fingers like mine, this was not an easy piece to build. I was constantly worried I was going to make a mess of it, or worse yet, break some of the delicate parts. I dare say the escape tower took me longer to build than any other part of this kit. Now that some of the sub-assemblies have dried, I can go back and do some more work on the rocket body. Two of the fins are molded into the body halves. The other two you have to glue separately and attach to the body later. As I'm putting them on, I want to check their alignment very carefully, because you don't want weird looking crooked fins. This kit gives you a lot of variety and allows you to build a lot of the different Mercury Redstone ships that actually were part of NASA's fleet. I'll be building Freedom 7. Included in the kit is everything you need to alter the appearance of the capsule to match up with the kit that you're building. A pretty ingenious system, if I do say so myself. One of the great advantages of the Tamiya thin cement is that it essentially melts the plastic and the pieces fuse together. If this is done right, when the part's dry, there is very little seam that will show. All you need to do is scrape it down gently with the side of your razor knife. Any spots that didn't fill up can be taken care of with a little bit of putty and some sanding. I've really come to love this Vallejo plastic putty. It goes on really smoothly. It's easy to work with. I love the pointy tip that it comes with. Overall, I give it a 9 out of 10. Horizon was very clever. Two of the sprues in the kit are identical, because for the most part, both halves are identical. There are a few modifications that need to be made to one side of the rocket body, though, and those are very simply taken care of with a little putty. The directions will help you figure out the orientation of the rocket, and it's important you keep that straight in your head. For example, these two little ports and the little square thing down on the bottom, they're identical on both sides of the ship, but you're only going to fill them on the back side of the ship. Again, you need to know the orientation of the kit. The Tamiya did a great job of filling most of the seam lines, but you don't want to have anything showing, and with a shiny white paint, it will show every tiny little flaw. So you're going to have some filling and some sanding to do. The ship had a lot of panel lines in it, and they're represented faithfully in the model. It's almost impossible to fill the seams without getting rid of some of this detail. So I'm going to use this razor knife and put that back in any place I obliterated it. Horizon really thought this out and made it so that you can build Freedom 7, Liberty Bell, or even the boilerplate capsule. What they did is they made you build a generic capsule, and then by the application of photo etch pieces, you could make the capsule look like whichever one it was supposed to be. Here I am attaching a piece that shows one of the windows. You'll also put the hatch according to where it was on the ship that you're making. Pretty clever if you ask me. As I'm using styrene and photo etch, here I'm using thick cyanoacrylate or superglue. Here I'm using a pin vise to drill out some tiny little holes that are marked on the instructions. Later I'll be gluing some photo etch antennas into these holes. I'll drill the holes, later paint the rocket, apply decals, and one of the finishing touches will be gluing in the antennas. After a light coat of Tamiya Fine Primer, it's off to my paint booth, where I will begin to paint the white body. I started by applying the thinned Tamiya white around the base and fins of the rocket. Now I'm going back and forth with nice, long, smooth strokes, laying the paint down gently. After setting the rocket aside to dry for a substantial amount of time, now I need to put the decals on. This is important because some of the other parts are going to need to go over the decal sheets, like the little antennas. So we'll get this on now. While the decal sits in some warm water, I'll use a brush to wet the body of the rocket. This will help me adjust the decal as I put it on. Remember I told you about registration of the rocket and keeping the orientation correct in your head? This is very important right here. This decal's left edge starts at a very specific place on the rocket body. So you really need to have your mind straight about where you are in correlation to the rocket. Once you have that figured out, it's a simple matter of wrapping the decal all the way around. These decals are beautiful. They look great and they were easy to work with. The little bit of adjustment that I needed to make here was no problem. Once I'm happy with the position of the decal, I'll blot away some of the excess water. Then it's time for Walther's decal set. I'll apply it liberally and allow the decal to soften and conform to the body of the rocket. As long as I'm in decaling, I might as well decal the majority of the body of the rocket. It's imperative that you're careful. You don't want to jostle any of the fresh decals that you've already laid down. There's not much else I can do with the rocket body until it is thoroughly dry. So I'm going to turn my attention to the launch platform and apply the photo etch pieces I mentioned earlier. Again, for this application, I'm going to be using a thick cyanoacrylate glue. And here's the finished launch platform, just waiting for a coat of paint. I can now turn my attention to the capsule. After giving the entire capsule a coat of flat black, I'll take a brush and brush paint some thinned Vallejo white paint, and I'll paint the little white band near the top of the capsule. This kind of work can be intimidating. I'm using a good magnifying visor, a good brush, and I've thinned my paints down and I'm taking my time. And there you have it. Not too bad, right? If I can do it, anybody can do it. Since I had the capsule out, I decided to go ahead and put on some of its decals. And right here, you're going to get to see me make a monster mistake. You should never, ever put a decal over a flat painted surface. You can get silvering. And yet, despite knowing that, that's exactly what I'm about to do. What I should have done is I should have applied a clear coat to the rocket, laid the decals down, and then coated the entire thing with a dull coat. I had a little bit of issue from doing it this way, but I was able to fix it later. Short of the escape tower, one of the most difficult aspects of this kit is painting the roll pattern down around the fins. My best advice to you is to take your time masking off the fins and use small pieces of tape. This will give you a lot more control as you do the masking. Be sure to burnish everything down really well. Once everything is taped down, it's over to the paint booth to apply a glossy black paint. I didn't do everything around the fins all at one time. I started by doing one entire section, then made sure that that could dry thoroughly before I even dared going back to do any of the other fins. Take the tape off as soon as the paint is fairly tacky. Don't let it dry all the way. You just increase your chances of pulling something up with the tape. You also increase the chances of screwing up the tape line. That is looking pretty good if I do say so myself. I'm very pleased with that. That's going to look awesome. After everything had dried thoroughly, I went back, masked off the rest of the roll pattern, and finished up that paint. Here I am, just using a brush and some thin down paint to do a little bit of touch-up work. You can also use a toothpick to help gently nudge a little bit of paint off if it gets to some place you don't want it. Alright, here we're really closing in on it. I'm going to use a brush and a little Tamiya red paint, thinned down of course, and I'm going to brush paint some of the detail work on the connection ring where the body of the rocket and the capsule are mated together.
I didn't find any meetings.
Now I'll use a little Tamiya masking tape to mask off the fins for a little bit of the fin detail at the bottom. Here I'm using a little Tamiya aluminum paint for the fin detail. I'll also use a little bit of gunmetal to paint the nozzle of the rocket engine. Okay, the paint is dry, the decals are dry, and it's time to seal everything up. I want a shiny finish, but not too shiny, so I'm going to use some Pledge Floor Care. Again, nice, long, smooth strokes. As you can see, I've mated the capsule to the body, and now it's time for the finishing touches. A little cyanoacrylate and the photo etch antennas, which you can almost not even see in this picture. And we'll stick those into the holes that we drilled earlier in this build. There's also a couple little photo etch pieces that go up at the mating collar between the body and the capsule. We'll get those on here too. And here's the finished model, Alan Shepard's Freedom 7, the ship that took the first American into space. All right, there you have it. The Mercury Redstone, the rocket that got us into space. I can't say enough about the astronauts of the Mercury program. These guys are true American heroes. I love space models. This is not my first. I've done a Mercury capsule. I've done a giant Saturn V. A lot of fun. This was a great, fun project. You'd be surprised. A small little rocket like this, a lot of challenges to it, but I think it came out really, really good, and I'm very happy with it, and I can't wait to take it and put it in my display case. Alright, I'm going to get out of here, but if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, click subscribe, and today, more than ever, most importantly, leave some comments, okay? Let me know if you liked this video. Do you want more of this, okay? That's the only way I'm going to know what you guys want. So let me know what you think. I'll try and get back to you, and I always appreciate the comments. Again, this has been Paul from Fat Guy Productions, leaving you today and saying, be good.